Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Matt here with another stage analysis video. Today we're going to be looking at the very next stage from the last stage that I did an analysis video on in this video series. So I think it's going to be kind of interesting for a few different reasons. If you remember that episode, or if you watched it, I was really starting to struggle with the wind at this match because the wind was picking up like crazy. So this here is not only the very next stage, but it's also the timed tiebreaker stage of this match. So there's a few things I wanted to go over. We're going to touch on my win brackets again for this stage a lot more quickly. The last stage, there was so much to discuss because I really wanted to explain how I was approaching the wind and all that. But this one's going to be a lot more straightforward and quick, hopefully. I also wanted to give some tips of shooting off of vehicles. Specifically for this stage, I was shooting off the hood of like an old Silverado cab. And then because this was the time stage, I will also give some tips about shooting quickly and trying to perform best at a tiebreaker stage. For the new shooters that are watching this, the reason why a tiebreaker stage is important at any match is because for any ties in points after the match, the tiebreaker stage is what will give shooters an advantage over the others with the same amount of points. So, for example, if three shooters are tied with 98 points for third place, the shooter that goes home with that third place trophy is the one that shoots the tiebreaker first with the most amount of points and second in the lowest time. And that's with any ties throughout the scoreboard afterwards. So that's the reason why the tiebreaker is so important, because it's literally the tiebreaker. And again, it's always points first and then time second. So of course, you always want to make sure you're hitting as many targets possible, but also trying to do it as quickly as possible for the tiebreaker stage. There's also some matches that have some sort of prize or incentive for winning the tiebreaker stage, although that's not the norm, so you should never expect that. It's also fun to go for it sometimes just for bragging rights, to show off to your buddies and whatnot. So I decided on this particular stage I was going to go for it and see if I could win the stage outright. Just a little bit of fun. So going over the stage design, I'll let the stage footage roll as I explain it. Again, it was shot off of this truck cab, specifically the hood, and it's just an old beat up Silverado. There was only one shooting position, which made the stage planning pretty easy. And the stage had two pairs of targets, a near and a far. The near pair of targets were sort of to the right at 138 yards, and the far pair of targets was to the left at 165 yards. Now, the target engagement sequence was pretty straightforward. You would start on the near targets and just go left, right, left with one shot each. Same thing on the far target set, left, right, left, and then you would repeat the entire target sequence again. So you would go again, left, right, close, left, right, far, repeat for a total of 12 rounds. And you would just do it as fast as possible because it was the tiebreaker stage. Now, a few things to note about how I approach this stage. We'll go on to my dope card afterwards, but in terms of actually shooting the stage, there's a few things to plan for. And as I mentioned, there's only one position off the truck hood, which is pretty straightforward. If you shoot enough PRS matches, you'll eventually have to shoot off of different vehicle types. But if it's like a truck or a car, it's very common to have to shoot off of those big steel or aluminum sometimes body panels, which have a lot of bounce to them. So it's not like shooting off of a bench. If you go modified prone off a bench, it's rock solid, just as solid as shooting prone. But on these vehicle panels, there's a lot more bounce, more so than you would expect if you have never shot off of the hood of a car before. So these big steel body panels will induce a lot of like a trampoline effect. So if you go into the middle of this body panel, whether it be the hood or the roof of a car, you'll notice right away you don't feel as stable vertically as you might think that you ought to feel. So this is a prime example of that, because coming up to this stage, a lot of shooters from the previous squad were actually warning us to be careful of the trampoline effect, or vertical bounce on the hood of this truck. A lot of people were warning against using a bipod like I'm doing here and recommending to use a single bag instead. But I used the bipod, as you can see here, and you'll see later in my scope camera footage how I was able to control the vertical bounce. Firstly, though, again, it doesn't matter if it's a truck or a car, if it's the hood or the roof, anything that's a really large body panel, you can use sort of the same techniques that I'm going to share with you now. So the first technique is if you're going to just use a single bag like it's a regular barricade, which I often do. There's a truck at MKM that they shoot off of all the time, and I almost always shoot single bag on that truck. And there's also like an old beat up Hyundai hatchback at Sheepdog Warrior, and I also often shoot just one bag off of that vehicle. If you're only going to be using one bag on these large body panels, it's really beneficial to sort of favor an edge, a hard edge, because there's going to be a lot less bounce. So it's quite tempting to push your rifle setup into the body panel, like more into the middle, so that you can maybe get like some rear support with your elbows if you're just using the single bag. But it's a little bit of a trap because all the weight of your rifle is still over that bag, and even if you have good rear support, you'll feel a lot of vertical bounce. It's sort of it's almost unexpectedly bouncy when I tried to do that in the past. So it's always better if you're going to use a single bag on the hood or the roof of a vehicle to favor one of the corners or one of the edges. So if I put a bag on this truck to shoot off of, I would make sure that some of it is over the corner and basically in this area here. Same thing with the roof. I would favor sort of like where the edge is instead of going into the middle of the roof and experiencing all that bounce. So that's the first tip I would give you. If you're going to shoot off of a bipod like I'm doing here, the best thing you can do, which is what I'm doing, is to jam a leg into something that isn't on that big body panel that's nice and rigid. So you can see here, I'm very purposely putting the right leg of that bipod into this big plastic panel under the windshield, because that is going to be rock solid with no bounce in it. And you'll see later in my target scope camera that I have hardly any vertical bounce, so that worked really nicely. Depending on the vehicle, obviously, not all vehicles will allow you to do that, or if you're shooting off of the roof of a vehicle, you don't really have that option. So that's when I would favor just the one bag setup. Going on to my dope card here. So this is my I couldn't find the actual dope card for the stage. Usually I save them, but I just couldn't find this one. So I just wrote it up on the computer. So at least it's legible this time. But this is what my dope card would have looked like. And you can see here the data that I have on it. The yardages on the left as usual, my elevation solutions. I planned to dial for the stage because I didn't want to have to hold over. So I decided to dial quickly so I could just use the main horizontal marking on my reticles. And then these are my wind brackets. So touching on my wind brackets, if you watch the previous episode, I was doing something that doesn't really work well for really gusty changing winds. What I was doing was I did prepare a solid wind bracket, but I was trying to correct. If I missed off target, I would try and correct from what I saw, but the wind was changing so fast and it was so hard to read that I couldn't read it properly. And by the time, even if I applied the right correction, that it would have been in a consistent wind, it would change, either die off or gust back up and push me off plate again. So chasing my corrections was not the way to do it. So I decided to try and get a better sort of baselined wind bracket. And if it fit on the plate, I wasn't going to correct if I saw, an impact really left edge or really right edge. I wasn't really going to take that into consideration because the wind was gusting up and down so much. Now, this stage was a little bit easier to execute this with because first off, the targets were quite generous, a lot more so than the previous stage. So my wind brackets more than fit on the plates anyway. And there wasn't as much to think about with the sequencing. It was just more straightforward. So my wind brackets fit on the plate really nicely. So I just sent them. Usually if I hit like left edge, I would correct and try and bring that more centered. But because the wind was gusting up and down, I decided if I'm on plate, I'm just going to send it, and the wind might blow it, left or right of plate. But if it's hitting the plate, I'm not going to change anything. So that's basically what I ended up doing. And it worked pretty well. So that's my dope card here, pretty straightforward. You can see my wind bracket for the close target is a 4 to 8 tenths hold, and you'll see later the target was quite large, so it more than fit that onto the plate. And then the far wind bracket was 0.7 to 1.1 mils. So pretty significant winds for this distance. But because the plates were large enough, I was also comfortable to go as fast as possible without getting sloppy, because that's obviously key. In any tiebreaker stage, if you want to go fast, that's cool, but never go so fast where you're going to become sloppy and potentially drop a point. Because if you drop a point in a tiebreaker stage, the speed is all for nothing, because you almost always have to clean tiebreaker stages before the points, or before the time matters. So let's go ahead and watch this stage. I'm first going to pause as needed to explain things as we go, and then we'll watch it afterwards without any pauses so that you can get a better feel for the stage cadence in real time.
Stand by.
So bag down on the hood, and you can see as I put the rifle down onto the truck, I'm very purposely putting that bipod leg into that rigid piece of plastic. As I'm putting the rifle down, I'm also looking over my rifle, so I'm putting it down in line with the first pair of targets. So I'm not putting it down and then having to pan and shift over to find the targets. I'm already with my naked eye looking at the target location and putting my rifle down right in line with that. So once I'm on glass, you can see I don't have to move my rifle. I'm already on the targets. Now, as mentioned, I planned my wind bracket to be 4 to 8 tenths, and you can see that the target is very generous, but I'm going to apply about a 4 to 8 tenths to center right about there. You can see 4 tenths is right here and 8 tenths is right there. So I'm applying that wind bracket right into the middle of the plate because I really trust that I measured the wind properly. And if it dies down, it'll hit somewhere on the left edge. And if it picks up, which it was doing, you know, and on the previous stage you saw it, it'll hit on the right. But I'm just going to send it because I can't read the wind switches. It was also a bit of a headwind, so the wind is going to change downrange before I feel it anyway. So this is the tactic I use. I said I'm just going to trust my wind brackets and just send them.
Impact.
Trusting my wind bracket going to the second target. Again, 4 tenths is right here and 8 tenths is right here. Applying it smack center into the plate and just sending it.
Impact.
I see it hit slightly left, but
Impact.
again, I'm ignoring the small little corrections. It's within the group size, within the wind conditions, so I just send it. I dialed there, as I mentioned before, so I was at 3.7. I dialed it quickly to 5.1. I am now looking at the far target pair, but you'll see it's not a big pan, so it wasn't difficult to do, but I'm making sure that this bipod leg is staying on that rigid part of the truck. Even if it was a huge swing, like 30 degrees, 40 degrees or whatever, I would pivot my body around that bipod leg as opposed to picking up my rifle and moving it on the hood, because then my bipod would be completely on that large panel and experiencing the vertical bounce. So going on to this here, apply my wind bracket. This was 7 tenths to 1.1. So 7 tenths is right about here. 1.1 is right about there. Again, right basically smack in the middle of that plate. Trusting my wind bracket and sending it.
Impact.
Same thing on this. And look at my vertical bounce.
Impact.
I'm shooting fast, but hardly any vertical bounce. So this leg on that body, rigid body panel there, or plastic panel, works
Impact.
really well. I'm shooting fast now because I feel confident.
Impact.
Same thing, dial, and trust my wind bracket.
Impact.
So pretty straightforward stage, but I did want to mention in terms of shooting quickly, you'll notice I'm shooting quickly, but I'm still spotting my shots. If I wanted to bring it to the next level and I was really confident in the stage, I sometimes, very rarely, but I'll sometimes pull a shot and I'll be cycling my bolt before I even see the bullet hit or miss. Because of the wind conditions this day, I stepped it back a little bit. So instead of putting it in like 10th gear, I was like in 8 or 9th gear, if you will. But that's how I shot this stage. So we'll watch it again here with no pauses. You can see, again, my time was 57 seconds. And it worked pretty well. So get on the truck, bipod leg on the rigid plastic, on target, apply my wind call right in the middle, hit,
Impact.
Gun dropped a little bit, but that's fine.
Impact.
And as soon as I see it hit,
Impact.
I'm just cycling my bolt, going to the next target. Dial for the far. So you see there, I probably dialed to 5 mils and I noticed it, so I just did one more click. That's why my hand went up to my turret again. But again, centering my far wind call on these targets, and I can see that I'm hitting on the left side of these, but because the wind was going to potentially pick up, I just trusted my wind call and I was just hammering them out as fast as possible without getting too sloppy.
Impact. 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 Impact.
So not too bad. 57 seconds, 57.24 seconds was able to get me the high score for the stage as well. So I was able to win this tiebreaker stage. I don't know if it actually came into consideration because I got third, I believe. I think I got third of this match. Let me check quickly, actually, because I am kind of interested now. All right, so I pulled up this match here on Practice Score because I was just curious to see for myself. So in this case for this match, the tiebreaker stage didn't come into play for me because as you can see, fourth place had 92 points. However, if Ken here in fourth had 93 points, this would have mattered because if I shoot this stage better than he did, I would be in third here. And that is the reason why tiebreakers matter. Going to this stage specifically, why I can't speak today. Let's see, this was car cab. So you can see here, I did indeed shoot the stage in the fastest time with a clean. And it looks like Doug here shot it clean 10 seconds slower. So I had quite a margin on the second place shooter on this particular stage. But look at this, Ken is right up there as well. He took third for this particular stage. So again, if he had tied me 93 points overall, it would have really mattered. So really interesting. Tiebreakers do matter. And when you're at the sort of like high competitive level of PRS, the tiebreaker stages are crucial. Many matches are decided by the tiebreaker. So it's good to learn to shoot cleanly as well as quickly. But of course, you want to make sure you're not getting sloppy as well. But this was a cool demonstration of that, and seeing the practice score results is interesting as well because it was very close to being something that mattered for me for this stage. But anyway, that was the stage. Going on now to my favorite part of the video, which is the grading of my performance in hindsight. I'm not gonna lie, because this one went really well and I was able to trust my wind calls and just hammer out shots as quickly as possible, I'm gonna give myself an A++, which is even more than an A+. Especially considering that the last stage I sort of bombed. I was in a bad spot mentally, and to try and recover from a poor stage also takes some mental fortitude and practice, because it's oftentimes shooters will get into a rut, and if they have one bad stage, it remains with them for the rest of the match. So to be able to shoot a stage like this right afterwards, again, generous targets, but I still had to prepare for it, and I shot it really quickly. Again, a 10-second 10-second difference between even the second place shooter for this stage meant that I did it with some pretty good time. So anyway, nice little quicker stage analysis video for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, as usual, I'll do my best to answer. And if not, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Cheers.